The Theater of Bloat, Old School RuneScape's third raid. A dark and depressing challenge laid out by vampire elites and sold to the citizens of Mireditch as a chance to escape centuries of predatory blood tithing and to be showered in glory. Unfortunately, all a farce. Designed by Verzik Vitur, one of the aforementioned vampire elites, this hellish trap was never meant to be conquered, as any challenger strong enough to actually defeat Verzik's pet playthings would then meet the unfortunate finale of facing Verzik herself, a guaranteed death sentence. However, this deep dive is not about how Verzik reached power or why her castle, Versinhaza, was constructed into the Theater of Bloat. This video is meant to explore her hellish creatures, the 5 bosses locked in Old School RuneScape's highest level raid. If you have ever completed the theater yourself, you may have noticed each boss drops a little diary once you kill it. I actually picked these books up and read them, so that you don't have to. Let's start with the Maiden of Sugadinti. I failed him. Everything I've done, I did for him. All the pain, all the suffering, all of it. I just wanted him to live a good life, a happy life. But I failed. I was foolish. You see, our maiden was once just a simple citizen living in Mireditch under vampire rule. She went by the name Saraphina. One day, after a trade for supplies went south, her brother got nicked by a poisonous blade, leaving him slowly dying. Hysterical, a desperate Saraphina set out for help from a doctor in Sector 5, but upon her arrival, she learned that the doctor had been taken into Darkmire weeks ago, likely to never be seen again. She returned home devastated while, unbeknownst to her, a certain elite vampire caught wind of her sorrows and came to pay her a visit. I was confronted by a strange-looking man wearing a large medallion. He came closer and called me by name. He told me he had an offer, one I wouldn't be able to refuse. The vampire, known only to few as Ranus Draken, proposed a deal to Saraphina in which he would save her brother's life if only the two would submit themselves for scientific vampire testing. Blinded by hope, Saraphina enlisted herself and her wounded brother into Draken's operations. Saraphina began writing in this diary after she asked Draken what would become of her after her own operation. Draken told her plainly, "By the time we are done, there will be nothing left of the person you are now." So she wrote in the diary of her sacrifice and her love for her brother and requested that the vampires deliver it to him once he awakens. She was so sure that her deal with the devils of Mauritania would save her brother, but when she awoke, a lifeless shell, as the Maiden of Sugadinti, a more gruesome truth was at play. Draken had not only turned Saraphina into a monster, but to her brother. It is later revealed that Draken in fact turned Saraphina's brother into the creature known as the Abomination, another weapon for the vampire overlords to play with. Draken then gifted the maiden to Verzik Vitur, who felt it fitting to stick the creature in her castle as the first challenge for her visitors. The two worked together to plant false propaganda that stated Saraphina was a brave warrior who was actually the first one capable of completing the Theater of Bloat. As challengers would enter the castle, they would be greeted by the truth and the horror of what they had stepped into. After the maiden comes the Pestilent Bloat. The Bloat is a Frankenstein-like creature made from a combination of 3 giant's heads, the body of an ogre, crushed frogs, human blood, cyclops arms, catapult pawn legs, an apple pie, and a sense of pride. The Bloat drops a book called The Butcher, which spells this out and tells you that he was created as a masterpiece gift for Verzik by an erratic vampire known as, you guessed it, the Butcher. Despite being afraid of her, the Butcher brought this gift to Verzik in her chambers, only to find Verzik gone, replaced by his least favorite thing, spiders. Through incoherent ramblings in his journal, the Butcher declares Verzik is dead and begins to freak out about the spiders. However, after a short 3, 2, 1 countdown, he is suddenly calm and once again pleased to deliver his gift. He states, "Verzik pleased, we make masterpiece. Ask us to stay, look after it. It looks so nice, cute." The Butcher resigns into the theater where he is tasked to stay and watch over his creation. On his way in, madness overcomes him once more. He realizes the figure before him and shouts, "Wait, what? Saraphina? It was you?" Quickly, he jots down more incoherent notes before returning to his incapacitated state, murmuring pleasure, pain, pleasure, pain. His incoherent notes, once deciphered, read, "Saraphina was betrayed, Verzik Vitur is dead, and that the Nyus will rule." Well, what the hell are the Nyus? Look no further than the next encounter within our Dungeon of Doom. After defeating waves upon waves of these frustrating little guys, you will be faced with a Nihilus Vasileus. While not being of much personal significance, the big spider drops a manuscript detailing a whole lot about the Nihilus race and its various species. Turns out, Nihilus are a group of arachnids that were native to the world of Vampirium. When the vampires were led to the world of Gielinor, a large number of these Nihilus traveled with them. These Nihilus were in possession of Verzic Vitur, who had domesticated several of their species. Over her vast amount of years on Gielinor, Verzic bred these arachnids until their population far exceeded its original back in Vampirium. Though there were originally only 3 species of Nihilus, thanks to this selective breeding, Verzic was able to create 4 new species, meaning there are now 7 Nihilus species in total. The 3 original species are the Ischyros, Toxobolos, and the Hagios. They're each known to vary in size, but they're never going to grow larger than a human, and they all adorn small claws on the end of their legs. The Ischyros is known for its tough abdomen and will be the first to use those claws on you, whereas the Toxobolos is distinguished by its dark green color and deadly spines, and the Hagios is noted by its light blue magical aura that it chooses to weaponize. These guys are extremely weak by themselves, however they're known to cluster up and quickly overwhelm their foes. The first species to come out of Verzic's breeding program is the Nihilus Matamenos. These guys are easy to identify thanks to their blood red color and the fact that they're slightly larger than the previous breeds. Apparently, due to their domestication, they aren't aggressive towards people and instead opt to scavenge for the blood of already dead prey. And although it isn't stated in the document, we observe this species launching its stored blood to heal whatever host it has been assigned, which in this case is our sweet beloved Saraphina. Next up is the Nihilus Athenatos. This breed is very similar to the Matamenos, with the only difference being that it is slightly larger than its predecessor and is able to internally modify the blood it stores, giving it an iconic purple tint. Not much is said about the modifications that are made to the blood, but we do know that Verzic seems to like it, and that poison makes it pop. Lastly are the Nihilus Vasileus and the Nihilus Principus. The former of these two you might remember, as it's the species you just put down in glorious combat. These guys are much larger than their cousins and have a limited ability to shapeshift. This gives them the appearance and abilities of the 3 true Nihilus. Matching those abilities with its size and strength, the Vasileus poses a much greater threat than its smaller kin. The Principus also have this shape-shifting power, however, they do not grow as large in size. As such, it is assumed that the Principus were a precursor to the breeding of the Vasileus. At this point, little beyond these facts are known about the Nihilus, yet if the Butcher's message is anything to be taken seriously, then these creatures may be hiding more than meets the eye. Continuing through the theater, challengers will next encounter the Dark Beast Sotetseg. It is immediately present that this is no ordinary Dark Beast. This Dark Beast has been corrupted by its captor and seems to have an increased connection to the Shadow Realm. After defeat, Sotetseg drops a journal that seems to be written by one of Lord Draken's subordinates. The author of the journal has been tasked with learning more about the secrets of the Shadow Realm. Through a series of 3 experiments that involve sending the Dark Beast into the Shadow Realm, the author received 3 senseless messages that read, Closer, Abandoned Deeper, The Tortured Experiment 1, Trapped, Follow Within the Shadow's Voice, and Sotetseg. Sotetseg! Unsure what these messages meant, on his final experiment, the frustrated researcher traveled with the Dark Beast to the Shadow Realm in order to ask this messenger himself what was meant. This is where the journal entries end, so there's no telling what actually happened to Sotetseg's captor. However, the scrambled messages from earlier can actually be rearranged to create a more coherent, albeit creepy, broadcast. It reads, Abandon the tortured experiment. Follow the trapped voice, Sotetseg. Closer, Sotetseg. Deeper within the shadows, Sotetseg 1. As the beast's connection to the Shadow Realm warms Verzic's heart and reminds her of the old empire, she happily accepts it as a gift from Draken and stores it in her House of Horrors. Now the final creature lurking in Verzic's castle is one that carries some heavy implications. Zarpus is the king of the Urasa, an ancient bat-like species that once roamed Vampirium. Upon defeat, he will drop an old journal that was written by Lord Draken himself. However, not the Rannis Draken we've been hearing much about, but rather his brother, Loerniel Draken. Draken? Go ahead, leave your hate comments now. In the text, Loerniel recounts his disdain for how Zeros and his ideals have turned his people from hunters into mere farmers. He claims his people were once hunters, unlike any other. No creature on Vampirium could match our strength or our cunning. No creature. However, there was one species that evaded them. That species was the Urasa. Apparently, when the 8 vampire tribes united under Zeros, this commendable foe was quickly massacred. Loerniel describes the day as a joyless slaughter and the first step to what we have become now. Despite this slaughter and the following roundup of survivors, one Urasa was able to go into hiding. That Urasa was Zarpus. Fast forward to the time when Loerniel is writing this. Regarding his home of Vampirium, he says, "Ever since I left, I have dreamt of my eventual return. Now, millennia later, I am finally here." Loerniel has found a way to return to Vampirium, which is news even Verzik herself finds fascinating. His task upon arrival is to bring back the Hunt, and to do that, he'll start by catching the last Urasa to walk free. Obviously, he succeeds at that, but the fact that this creature even exists means that perhaps one day there will be more excursions to Vampirium. There it is, Luigi's Mansion, but it's RuneScape. Of course, like I mentioned earlier, if a challenger is able to defeat all of these bosses, that's when it's time to take on big bad Verzik herself. But guys, the Verzik lore runs deep, and that's enough for its own separate video. So if you've enjoyed this and you want to see that get made in the future, please let me know by leaving a comment down below. I hope you enjoyed learning about the Theater of Blood bosses, and I also hope that next time you load in with your boys, an honorable tear rolls down your cheek as you put poor Saraphina out of her misery.